Started today and cover more of this information. We know, and I recognize many of the friendly faces here from those engaged in the Thunkable community, already experimenting, testing, and building with Thunkable modules. But there also may be some folks out there who are not yet familiar with it. So we hope to cover all topics today, and we encourage everyone here to join in on the conversation by using the chat. So please keep the questions coming here. We'll cover some housekeeping and get things kicked off. So to begin, my name's John McMullen. I am on the marketing team. I'm here to help host and facilitate today's conversation, but really the star of our show is Brian Liu, who's a solution engineer. He's been building and testing Thunkable modules for quite a while. So pleased to have Brian here share his expertise. Brian, thank you for joining us today.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you for also hosting this, John.
Absolutely. So quite excited to get started. First things first, want to cover the agenda today. We have a lot to jam pack in here. We'll try not to take the full time, but make sure we cover it all. So first of all, we want to cover what are modules? What are Thunkable modules? How do they help and fit into your building experience? Then we want to cover how to use Thunkable modules. Where do they fit within your project? What are some do's and don'ts of using modules or how to build modules? Most importantly, we'll get to a live demo. Brian will show us the two types of modules, the logic modules, as well as just the Thunkable modules with the UI component and blocks. And then we'll have some experiments and takeaways for you all to go and build upon yourselves. We'll cover best practices, how to experiment, how to use, how to add them to your apps and why it improves your building experience. And of course, we'll finish with Q&A. So we'll make sure that we try to get to all your questions. So that is our agenda for today. Jumping in on some housekeeping, I see there's some good questions already in the chat, and I know there's a bunch of folks that registered that aren't able to make it. Well, first of all, we do want to keep this a collaborative experience with you all that have joined us. So please ask questions in the chat. We'll do our best to get to all of them. Make sure that Brian or myself can try to answer them. So if you see something come up about a topic on screen or something that you may have a question about modules, just know there's probably plenty of other folks out there with similar questions. So please go ahead and drop those in the chat. If we are not able to get to all the questions, fear not, we will follow up via email shortly after this event. We want to make sure that we're able to address what we can. We do have a limited time here as a group on today's webinar, but we will follow up with an email. So if you have a very specific question, we may hold that for email, but we'll also try to get to as many as we can for today. And then finally, yes, this session will be recorded for those of you that are not able to stay with us the whole time, or those of you that may be watching right now on demand. We will send that out for all of you that have registered for the webinar, and it will be hosted on our resources section of the website. So you can come back to today's event and rewatch it at your own leisure, and want to make sure that you all get the recording. So keep an eye out on your inboxes for a recording of today's session that will be sent out probably in the next 24 hours of today's event. All right, let's shift gears here and talk about Thunkable modules. Quick question for the chat. How many of you all have started to use Thunkable modules? You can just say me or I have in the chat. Just curious how many of you have started to experiment, play with, or actually use within your development process. Awesome. Looks like quite a few folks have already jumped in already. So to step back, Thunkable modules really allows you, the user and the creator, to build custom functions that can be used across screens, across multiple projects, across multiple apps. And it really does two things for you. It helps unlock speed so that you can build faster, and helps you unlock advanced functionality for your apps. So we'll cover a bit of that today. Really, Thunkable modules at its essence is allowing you to build components outside of your app projects to then put in across apps, screens, projects, and then shared with others in the Thunkable network. And there's two types here of Thunkable modules. The first is built in the module editor. And this is what we've called, previously it was in public beta as custom components. It has formally launched as Thunkable modules. And this is a design component with logic blocks behind it. You'll notice the screen looks very familiar to designing on a Thunkable project screen, but the rest of the phone size is grayed out. You can set those settings or drag and drop to the size you need. But really what we're trying to do is create a specific function or visual component tied with blocks that can be added to your projects. And Brian will be able to demo that here for us momentarily. Then there's also the logic module editor. The difference here is logic modules are strictly blocks. It's a combination of blocks, and you're building these primarily for functions to execute in the background. Brian will also build the demo of this for us today, show us the purpose and premise of that. But what's really cool here is you can build some pretty powerful functions and plug those into your projects without having to pull them from screen to screen or build it one time for a project and remix it and pull it over. You can build it in logic module editor, put it into your projects, and execute some really powerful functions within your app to operate and supercharge that app. So here we go. We'll get into that. That's just a quick overview. Just nomenclature here for all of us. We will refer to modules as both of these, but do note there's two distinct types. There is the logic module with no UI component, and then the module UI plus blocks. Also, the whole program is known as Thunkable Modules, so we'll use some of that interchangeably. Do recommend you checking out docs, and of course, while we're live here together today, you can ask questions. Brian will call that out, but certainly wanted to note that the whole program, Thunkable Modules, does incorporate a couple different elements here. So why would you use Thunkable Modules? Well, we mentioned development speed. For those of you that have fully built apps and again, recognize a lot of familiar names here, being able to build that function outside of the single project allows you to pull it into multiple screens. So if you're thinking of like a navigator or maybe a hamburger menu, which Brian will show us here in a bit, you're able to deploy that across screens without having to copy and paste or pull in screens or elements. You can build that in the module editor and not only put it across the screens of your project, but share it with others, put it in multiple projects, and so on. So it really helps you move faster. Next is that advanced functionality. If you are building like an AI chatbot or something like a login, log out screen, we know that that can take time. If you build it in modules, you're able to drop that into your project, and in a matter of a few clicks and hooking up the database, you can have a functioning login, log out screen or a chatbot or whatever your use case may be. Instead of having to rebuild it and rehook it up every screen or every project, you can just build it once, pull it into your project, and off you go to focus on the next steps of your development process. And finally, and probably most importantly, is repeatability. We really want to empower you all to build once, reuse, share, and remix as much as possible. We have great threads going in our community at community.thunkable.com. And part of the fun feature set that comes with Thunkable Modules is the ability, just like our app projects, to copy and remix projects, to build on top of other modules. So we really want to unlock the community's effort to build these modules, share them with others, and see where this can go. Because in the future, we want everyone to not only be able to build apps block by block like you can do today, but start to grab modules off the shelf and plug them into your app, and then fine tune with blocks as needed. So that's a glimpse of where we're trying to get to the future. We really need to empower all of you all to continue to experiment and build with modules and see where you all can take it. So that's a quick overview of why to use modules. Let's actually get into it now here with a live demo. So I will turn it over to Brian here to tee up the first demo we have here today. Brian, over to you.
All right. Thanks, John. And thanks, everyone, for joining today. I'm going to go ahead and start. I'm going to take over to share. And we're going to just get right into it. So we're going to go into, so here we go. All right. So now we are on Thunkable. So this is one of our sample apps from our sample gallery. It's just a quote calculator app. And this is one where, there's many different screens, and a feature I would like to have is some screen navigator tool that lets me go to other screens on my app. Something very simple, something very basic. Now, if I were to build this normally, I would have to go to each screen that I want this on and build it multiple times, drag in all the components, hook up all the blocks, and do that, if I want it on 3 screens, 3 different times. But, I can do that once using modules. And that is, it saves me a lot. It saves me a lot of time, saves you guys a lot of time. Doing it once versus 3 times, it's a no-brainer. So why don't we go take a look at that? I'm going to go ahead and hop into the modules editor now. So to access modules, just as a quick overview, we can head back to the main projects page. On the left side under customizations, right under save screens, here's modules. And if I were creating one for the first time, I would create a new module button. However, I have one already ready for us. So we're going to go ahead and hop into Hamburger menu. So this is a navigation module that I've created. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to cover the component aspect first. Then I'm going to cover the blocks and the module aspect right after. So I'm going to make this visible very quickly. So this module is quite simple. It's 2 components, a hamburger icon, and a simple list. And this is just to show something very simple, something that anyone can use, and something anyone can build. Now, the great thing about modules is that once you have the components in place where you want them, I don't have to worry about the positions of each component after I drag it in. So this is especially important if positioning is very crucial, or if you have overlapping components. For example, if you wanted a button right on top of a label, right? Once you have everything built and set up in your module, once you import it in, everything is treated as one component that will never shift and will not move. Now, here, what I want is to click this icon. This simple list will show up, and the simple list will be a list of all the screens that I want to be able to navigate to. Now, if one of you were building the module for your own specific app, what you could do is in the simple list here, you could type out the screens that you want to be able to navigate to. But for this module specifically, I want it to be a little bit dynamic. So I want to be able to do this using blocks. But if you wanted to take this and make it usable for only, if you know that you're using this for only your own project and your own, and you know how many screens that you want, you can go ahead and type it out. And there's no one way or the other. You don't have to make it dynamic and make it complex if you don't need it to be. Right? You should make this tailored for yourself and your own personal use. But for the purpose of this, I'm going to make it dynamic. So I'm going to make this invisible again because I want the simple list to only be shown when I click the icon. And now I'm going to hop over to blocks to explain the module side of things. So here we are on all the blocks. So this module will cover, I'm going to cover properties and events for this module. And then when I hop over to logic modules, I'm going to cover the last aspect, which is methods. Now, everything that I say for modules in terms of properties and events also apply for logic module, and whatever I say for logic module also applies for regular modules as well. The main big difference is that logic modules don't have that component aspect, but roughly everything else can be applied to one another. So I'm going to get started, and I'm going to explain the properties. The first aspect, which is properties. So what are properties? Properties are essentially what you see when you drag in a module and you see the property panel on the right side. You basically get to make your own, and you get to basically fill in the information. So if you think about when you drag in a text input on the right side, you see enter the text here. What font do you want? What background color you want? You basically get to create those as you need for your own specific module. And then when you use them in either your modules or when you drag into your app, it then translates over to the green blocks that you use to get those properties of that module. So this is a good way to basically preset information. Now, what do we need for this module? Well, I need the names of all the screens. For me, what I'm going to do is I'm going to have one property called menu items, and I added a little note in the parentheses, separated each item with a comma. You don't necessarily have to do it this way. The great thing is you can do this and what I typically recommend is do it in the way that makes sense for you, right? If you know that this module is for your own app and you're not intending to share it to everyone else and you want to use it for just one project and you just have 5 screens you want to navigate to, it's perfectly fine if it makes sense to you to have 5 different properties, each containing the value of the screen you want to navigate to. For me though, I'm going to make it as a list. So how this works is it's very decently simple, but I'm going to try my best to explain how to use all the blocks efficiently. So with modules, if you click on module workspace, this will contain the list of everything that you've created. And it also creates a block here called when module initialized. So when module initialized basically is the equivalent of when screen opens/starts, if you're familiar with, if you've used that block before. Basically, whenever you navigate to a screen, your app starts, you go to that screen, everything on when your screen loads up, this block will execute, assuming that your module is in that screen. So how we use that in combination with our property block is when the module initializes, when the screen opens and this module runs and then initializes, we're going to set the text item to that property after doing some modifications. So that's how you can use properties. Now I'm going to move on to the next one, which is events. Now, events is a little bit more complicated and it's a little bit tricky, but I'm going to try my best to explain it in the simplest terms. So how to use what events do is they let your module communicate to your project. So the best way to think about this is think of your module as, kind of like a library or an employee or another entity. And you want to basically figure out, hey, when do I want this module, right, to communicate to me, to tell me information, to relay information to me, or to tell me when something happens, right? So it could be, for example, it could be the case that, you have this module and once you click a button, it goes off and does its thing and you never need to hear from it again. It's okay just doing its own execution of blocks. And once it goes off, you're okay not hearing from it ever again. In that case, you don't need an event, right? Or in another case, let's say you have a module that does a series of algorithms or a series of complex block executions, and you want to know at the end of it when it's done and what the results are. In that case, you would need a module. Or if you want to hear from it at, once it hits the midpoint of an execution of a block, hey, let me know when you hit that part. Like there's a crucial part. I want to know when you hit that part so I can do something. That'd be another case where you want to use an event. So for us here, I want to be able to know when somebody clicks clicks one of the simplest items to navigate. I want to know when that happens, right? So in that case, I would create an event. So here I have my item clicked event. And as I mentioned before, I don't necessarily need to know if you wanted to know what screen that person is navigating to, what you can do is you can hit the add parameter button. I already have this created, so I'm not gonna be able to add that. But if I were creating this for the first time and I wanted to know what screen they're navigating to, you can add a parameter and then you can pass that information in. For me, I don't really need to know what screen they're navigating to. What I care about is that they're just going to navigate. So again, you can access it by clicking the module workspace. Then it's going to be this purple block, call module item clicked. And then you drag it on to where you need it to be called, and it'd be when simplest item clicked. Now, that covers both properties and events, and this is ready to be published. Now, normally, what I would recommend for everyone watching would be if you're making a module, you can actually test your module using web preview. And this is great for making sure your module works, everything is working well before you publish. Because if just for everyone's knowledge, once you publish the events, methods, and properties that you make, once you publish it, it cannot be deleted. So I would encourage multiple rounds of testing. For this module specifically, because it needs to have a property set and it also has to be initialized, this is a module where we can't really web test it. If that's the case, you can go ahead and publish it, and don't worry, you can always update it in the future. And I'm going to cover updating in a later area. So I'm going to go over publishing. So to publish, what you need to do is hit the publish button, publish module, and this little wizard comes up. And this lets you basically write in your release notes. And you don't have to keep it you don't have to do this very complicated. Basically, what I like to do is I like to do like a V to indicate version and a number so I can track what version I'm on. And then write like a short little summary. And it doesn't have to be very complicated. I'm just going to write created hamburger menu. Oops. And then I'm going to hit publish. And now this thing pops up. Your module has been successfully published. So now it is good to go. If I then go back to my projects page and back to my quote estimator, we can then now import our module that we just created. Now, how do we do that? Next to create components, there's a nice little plus button that says import a module into this project. We can click on that. This little wizard pops up, and you can see 3 different tabs. So the first tab that it automatically defaults to is the public gallery. And as John mentioned before, this is basically our modules that we create that anyone can use, remix, and make their own. This tab, the module links tab, lets you share modules. If somebody else created a module, if you have a share link, you can paste this in and it imports that module. And lastly, my modules, which is basically a list of all your modules. So we're going to go ahead and click on Hamburger menu, the one that we just published. And you'll see here, module selected and ready to import. We can go ahead and hit the import button. And now on the left side, as you'll notice, it has a new section, modules, and the thing that we just created, Hamburger menu. Now, to use this, we treat it like any other component. And what we do is we can click on it and drag it where we want on our project. And there we go. There's our Hamburger menu module. Now, we can do this then on any other screen that we want. Let's say I want it on this customer list screen. I can just drag it on here. And I can do this for as many screens as I want. Let's just say we'll just use these 2 screens just for now. So now, as you see here, if you remember, we created a property, a menu item, separate each item with a comma. Now, here we would type in the list or the text string of all the screens that we want to navigate to. For the purpose of time, I pre-written that already on a note, and I'm just going to copy and paste so I can spare everyone me awkwardly spelling every screen wrong. And then me add it to the customer list screen. I accidentally moved it. And we can go ahead and web test this now. Web preview, sorry. So we can now give it a try. So we click on this, simple list pops up, and now it is populated with all the screens that we have typed. And if we were to click on one, let's just try going to the customer list screen. It navigates us to the customer list screen. That's amazing. That's great. Everything works. And then we can also go back. So that is modules, properties, and events. I'm going to take a quick little water break.
Yeah, Brian, get yourself some water. That was wonderful. Thank you for walking us through that. As Brian gets caught up here, just to make sure we walk through, because there was a lot of good info in there. Started in the modules editor. Brian, I know you had built that hamburger menu recently, but we'll make sure that everyone here on this call, as well as our community, has access to that to dive into everything that Brian has built. Walked us through properties and events. We'll cover methods later, but made sure we updated and understood the properties and events of that module. Walked through the publishing process, me being a bit of a neat freak, updated the release notes, made sure that it's version 2, made sure we covered some organization there, got it published, updated it, pulled it into an existing project. This is a showcase app. So some of you, or maybe all of you, have seen this within our showcase apps off the project page, but it would be nice if you could quickly navigate between screens, and in a matter of drag, drop, copy, paste there, Brian added a hamburger menu so that we can blaze through navigation of this sample app. So yeah, that was awesome. And I did see some questions come in as well. We'll make sure we get to those. There's a few about module execution, module release process. So just for the sake of purpose, or for the purpose of presentation, we turn off the chat, or at least make it internal only, so we can see your questions. We'll be sure to address all those. So please do keep your questions coming within the chat. We'll get to those, but here during the demo, we want to make sure that we don't get totally blown up by side chatter. So That was an overview of modules. Now we'll shift gears a little bit, Brian, if you don't mind showing us the logic module side of things.
Yep. Thank you for recapping while I take a quick little water break. So now let's hop over to logic modules, and I'm gonna showcase this with another sample app. I'm gonna share. All right, I just shifted tab, and so now we're in another project. This is the sign in, sign out template, and with logic modules in the title, as you can see. And this one, I'm going to be showing the logic modules, updating basically, what happens if you want to make some changes to your module and you want to be able to push that new change out, as well as the last of the modules, the methods. So for this, the logic module is not, because it does not have a component aspect, you cannot see it in the design tab. So to see it, we have to go to blocks. And as you can see here, under logic modules, there's a new section between core and app features. We can see a logic module, and you can see our logic module is password strength. So let's take a look and see what it does really quickly. If I use this nifty little mini map here and I drag it over here, hello, here is our logic module. It is call password, get password strength. And basically what we're doing here is we're passing in a password that we typed in. It gives it out an output, basically the strength of the password. We can join that with a string and set a text to it. Now I'm going to show how this works in a little bit, but I'm going to go into the logic module first. So let's hop into there. So we're going to, same way I went to modules, we're going to hop back out to the projects page. We're going to head down to the customizations underneath modules to logic modules. And if I were to create a new logic module, again, I would hit this nice little blue button here. But I have one already made, so we're going to head into password strength. So here is, let me zoom out. Here are all the blocks from password strength. As you notice, there's quite a few. And this is one really nice thing about logic module, is that I don't really need all these blocks to be present in my project. If you remember just a little bit earlier, all of these blocks, all of this logic, all of these like ifs, loops, and whens are all contained in that one nice little purple block that you just saw earlier. So this is a lot. I'm not gonna really cover the logic all too much, but more so the last thing, which is methods. So what are methods? I have two methods here. They both do roughly the same thing. Take my word for it. But what methods lets you do is it lets you give instructions to your modules. You can have like instructions pre-set up, and then in your project, you can tell it when to go off and do something, right? When you want it to go ahead and execute, your string of your chunk of blocks. For us here, we want to basically create, a set of blocks that, when we wanted to take in a password, run through a bunch of if statements, and spit back out some output for us. So for us, what we'll need is a parameter, which is input, which is a password. We provide a password, and then one output. It returns out one thing. So how to use it is how we use properties and events. You click on module workspace, and you can see all the events and methods and properties that you've created. I only have methods for this, so it only shows my methods. So as you can see, how you use it is you drag it on here, as I have here, and you can see the password, which I have preset here. And then lastly, if you come down here, it has all the returns. You can either copy and paste these, or I believe you can grab these from functions if you need more than one return. When you have it here, when you first drag it on, it only has one return, but you can use multiple. So what we're going to do is we're going to update this update this logic module. Since this was already imported into our project, what we can do is if we republish this, it will essentially give it an update. So for this, let's just do something very simple. I think that, maybe our criteria is a little bit too strict, and I want to narrow this to, make this a little bit more lax and make it, 10, just lower it down. What we can do is after you make your changes, if you come to the top right, you can hit publish again, publish module, and write in the release note. Again, I like using V for version and 3, and then just a nice little summary, just saying lower restriction for strong password. And again, if you're publishing yourself, make it make sense to you. It doesn't have to be perfect. We're going to hit publish. You're going to see your module is successfully published. And now we are going to head back to our projects. We're going to go back into our sign in, sign out. Back into our blocks. We're going to scroll down to our logic module. We're going to hit the secure icon, and we are going to update. And you'll see, do you want to update? It has a release notes. We hit update. And now it says logic module has been updated. Now we're going to move back over to here. So now actually, because all we've done is just change the blocks, we didn't really create a new method or new event. Once you've updated, this block is all set to go. You don't need to delete it and re-add one in. You don't need to touch it at all, actually. It's actually already been updated. It's already all set to go. If you did create a new one, you can hit password strength, and anything new that you've created will be shown up here. But in this time, we just updated a block, and we are basically set to test it out now. So we go back to design. We hit web preview. And let's go to sign up. We're going to delete this because we don't need it. If I then start typing in a password, I'm going to type in the worst password to use, which is password. You can see it spits out very weak. If I were to then throw in a bunch of symbols and type in some stuff, it starts to become stronger and stronger, and we hit very strong. So that is logic module and the last aspect, which is methods. So just to recap, what we did is we wanted to have password strength. And usually what that requires is a long series of blocks. And instead of having it all contained here, we created a logic module. We changed some parameters. We were able to update it, and we were to see that change reflected in our project without much effort on our part. So that covers all three aspects of modules, properties, events, methods, as well as publishing and updating. So now I'm going to pass it back to John to screen share the rest of the presentation now.
Wonderful. Thank you, Brian. And yeah, I've seen a few more questions roll in. If you have any questions out there about modules or logic modules, please let us know. We're going to shift gears here and start to answer those. Brian, you recapped that beautifully, in terms of building an advanced function, I would say, like password strength, having to do that for multiple projects or pull that in. Now there's just a module, right? And it's a lot cleaner where you can pull in that purple block that you built, define the methods, and put that into your project. And that's easy and available for everyone to use, just in a matter of adding that to a project. All right. So to recap here, winding down the presentation and getting into questions, I want to cover best practices, right? This is a new approach for some of you longtime users on Thunkable. So first of all, best practices. Number one, start simple. You want to build things that are crucial for your app and reusable. Not everything has to be a module. Brian, do you have any insight or recommendations for starting simple?
Yeah, so I would think about what would be important to have, would be crucial to have, versus what would be nice to have. I would always start off with what's important and then make it work, make it ugly, and then afterwards clean it up and make it look nice.
Absolutely. Hey, done is better than perfect, and recommend that. Get it done and you can perfect later. You can always update. And yeah, when you get to V15 on those release notes, we know that this app's had some serious work through, but certainly done is better than perfect. Next is organization, just making sure that in terms of building your modules, just like building apps, you want to have proper naming, hierarchy, comments. This will make it easier to plug and play and reuse later. Or if you're pulling from others or sharing in the community, that gives you that leg up. Brian, I know we breezed through a couple demos today, but you yourself have built a ton of modules that have already been shared out there. What tips do you use to maintain organization?
Yeah, I think making sure your components are named and making it, keeping the names very simple. It doesn't have to be very complex. And especially important when, you want to go back to your module and you want to make some changes later down the road. You want to be able to remember, what each component does and not have to go through each item again over and over again every time you want to, make a small change.
Yep. That's a great point. Making sure consistency and clarity is key there. And then finally, experimentation. Modules and launch modules have a lot of similarities. They're all based upon the Thunkable approach of using blocks to develop. But it's great to familiarize yourself, right? You can't hurt the system. Go ahead and test it, push the limits, experiment with it. We want to make sure that we're continuing to develop, but you also get all familiar with it. So in terms of experimentation, Brian, I know that you've built a lot of these, poked around. What have you learned during experimentation?
Yeah, experimenting is, something that is both crucial and fun to do. Testing, the limits of what you can build. But, while you're experimenting, it's good to have a safe copy of your module. So as you're experimenting, make duplicates, rename those duplicates as, V1, V2, and go off and mess around with the duplicate as much as you want without worry that, the working version is going to be, ruined, or you'll have to undo all those changes that don't work.
That's a great point. Great call out. If you got something that works, make a duplicate of that before you go and start to add on or bolt on some new functions. That way, something works, and then it can always be improved from there, but you don't want to break the working element. All right. So shifting gears here and bringing this here towards some of the Q&A wrap up time. But for those of you out there who have not yet started building on Thunkable, here's why you should start. For those of you that are not familiar, Thunkable is a mobile app development platform. We do allow you to create custom mobile apps for Android, iOS, and web. And you can build once from a single project, which Brian showed, and publish to all three of these operating systems. We've launched some awesome embedded AI capabilities. We have an integration with OpenAI within the blocks there, but we also, for our business and enterprise users, have an AI assistant to help you draft copy for labels and text in your app or generate images. Recommend all of you checking that out. But there's some awesome AI capabilities within apps, within the building experience, or that you can put within the apps you are building. Easy sharing is covered. You can share apps, you can share projects, you can share modules. We're really trying to create that network here where everyone can work together because we believe a rising tide lifts all ships. So you can share and build your modules and then collaborate with our community. Live testing, also Brian showed this, but you can see your app come to life as you go, not only on the web preview within the builder experience, but as well with the Thunkable Live companion app. So you can actually have it on your phone as it's coming together. The last couple here, just blocks, we covered those, but that is an integral part of Thunkable's building experience. Simple drag and drop logic instead of having to code this out. And of course, collaboration. You can work together, combined, iterate, or use existing projects to work together as a team. Whether you're a user of one or actually on a team, we try to pull together everybody in the Thunkable community to work together to make mobile app development fast and fun. So with that, a couple key takeaways. Brian showed that, but for those of you that have not yet started building with modules, be sure to check out our gallery of modules. So from within your project, you can check out the modules here simply by clicking that plus sign on add components. I believe there's 4 or 5 right now. There'll be more coming soon. And we do want to hear from you all what modules you would like to see. So be sure to check that out and try that out. and start adding them to your project. Second is join our community page. We have a dedicated thread on modules. We want to make sure that, we're able to help serve and support you, but we also want to hear from you all and your experience building with modules. And of course, you can share what you're building there, remix and build on top of. So do check that out. The link to that has been shared in the chat. So, bookmark it, save it, star it. That's a great place for you all to get additional help, support, and get over some hurdles should you face any in this experience. And then finally, make sure to experiment, right? Done is better than perfect. Start to use this in your app development approach. Our goal here, again, is to help speed up the development process as well as unlock advanced capabilities. So get started today by kind of experimenting with it, using what others have built, and soon it'll become part of your everyday Thunkable workflow, being able to pull modules off the shelf, put them into your apps, and speed up that development process.